Yes, good morning. It is Saturday, the 24th of July, 2021. The day badminton starts in Tokyo. This is John Noble here, and my colleague Mark Topping is on jury service this week. So we won't hear, well, we'll hear Mark at the end of part 4 of this interview with Carol Farrell, and then Mark shall be back live with us here on the podcast next week when we go into the month of August. I would like to welcome all our listeners all over the world to the Badminton Talk Podcast, which you know is sponsored by, of course, the Q Shuttle Gold and Silver, which is now in Ireland. And we're excited with this shuttle, but we're obviously very excited with a couple of things. First of all, of course, we should say the Olympics, which starts today. It started at 9 o'clock. Some fantastic matches on the schedule, and as I look down to a few names coming out, Yamaguchi at 9:40 is coming out to play in a singles match. That should be really exciting. What other big names can I see here just as I look through the schedule? Jonathan Christie, our friend Iwan Saya from Indonesia at 11 o'clock. That should be another one. Taisi Ying at 1 o'clock, you'll see her. And as we go into the afternoon session, there are some cracking matches. Ackelson at 19:20. We all know Ackelson. Yeah, he's playing. And then we go on to Sunday's schedule, some cracking matches. Chao Chin Chen, yes, the second seed is playing at 10 in the morning. And Yvonne Lee is at 11:20 against Naomi Okuhara from Japan. That should be a cracking game. Yes, absolutely. And so on it goes. But of course, Nat, so far not yet on the schedule, but keep an eye. He'll be there very soon. So, welcome to everyone to the Badminton Talk Podcast. Today we are going to conclude the interview with Carol Farrell, who's been on the Badminton Talk Podcast for the last 3 weeks. This is the final installment. This is it. We are going to hear from one of the world's top umpires who umpired in the 2012 Olympic final in London in the ladies' doubles. So with that in mind, I am going to take you back to the interview that we carried out with Carol Farrell. And it is literally over, I think maybe to my colleague Mark, to continue this riveting interview.
Yes, I would love to ask Carol, as she's one of the world's top umpires and educators, and really want to talk more sort of educational questions about the rules of badminton. And I notice sometimes in badminton tournaments, probably the area that seems to get the most contention is when players are called for a service fault. Now, I know this is maybe not directly an umpire thing because it's the service judge who sits usually on the opposite side of the court to the umpire. But as far as I'm aware, maybe you can confirm, the service judge is an umpire, a highly qualified umpire in their own right. Probably the best thing to do is, what I'm interested in is, can you maybe explain the service rule to our listeners? And why is there this contention or sometimes frustration from players? Occasionally, I wouldn't say it happens all the time, but I do see it, particularly in doubles matches. That seems to be where it seems that the frustration of the players come out a little bit.
And a service judge is an umpire, is a service judge. There's no differentiating. We do both jobs equally. If we're at a tournament, I will umpire this match. I will service judge the next one. I will umpire the one after that. So we just roll it over. So there's no specific job. You are just an umpire sitting in the service judge chair doing another job on that particular match. That's it. The bowling, you're right. There's probably, if players are going to complain about serves, about being faulted, it does happen in doubles more than it happens in singles. I could put it down to the fact that probably in singles, players don't actually foul serve as much. There's not the same pressure within the match to tighten that serve. You need nearly more time than anything else to be able to, But so there would be less service faults in singles than in doubles for that reason. Players get frustrated when we fault them, probably because they don't think they're faulting. First one. Second one, they don't mean to do it. I would say in probably 90% of the time, and maybe even more. A player does not deliberately foul serve. They're pushing the limit. They're pushing that serve to the limit to get the best result out of it. And sometimes they cross the line. And that's when we call them.
Yeah.
Most players will take the first call. Unhappily, perhaps, but they'll take it anyway. And then they do try and they improve their serve. But then it starts to slip again. And that's natural, isn't it? You've been aware you were served too high, so you put the shuttle down a little bit and down a little, and then the game is going on and it's a tough game, and the shuttle starts to inch up and up and up and up, and then suddenly it's too high again, and the service judge says, fault again, and then you get annoyed, but I put the shuttle down.
Yeah.
10 minutes. You did, and it brings me to mind of something that happened years ago at the French Open. I was there actually as an examiner, and a very top-class European player had been faulted 4 or 5 times in the match in a doubles game. Not too happy about being faulted. I have to say it happened to him on occasions. Yeah. And he came off after the match, and I was walking around the back in the back of house, and he was passing me by, and he called me over, and he said, I want to ask you about the serve. And, I wasn't going to answer say anything about the umpire who called him, but he said, I know I faulted. And what he said to me was, I know I faulted the first time. He said, but then I changed it. So why was I called again? And I looked at him and I said, well, I've umpired you and serviced you many times. And I said, yes, you do try and fix it. I said, but, as the game goes on, you tighten that serve up again and it creeps back up again. And then when it comes back up again, you get called again. Yeah. And he looked at me and he went, oh, right, okay, I see what you mean. And he disappeared off. And I think that's something with players. The main service fault that they all get caught for is being too high. Yeah. Whichever law we decide to use. But players push the limit to get the best they can out of a serve. And sometimes they go over the limit. And they don't realise they've gone over it and they're not too happy.
And Carol, with the new apparatus for looking at the level, the plastic guidance that you see, I'm sure there's a name.
Our measuring stick,
your measuring stick, yeah. Since that's been implemented, has the number of foul serves reduced, or has it stayed the same, or has it increased, do you think? Do you know? Or, has it put more control? Height-wise,
well, you see, 2 things happened. When that was introduced, that determined the height at 115. Prior to that, the law stated that you had to serve below your waist. Now, if you're me at 5'2", my waist is in one place, and Mark, your waist is higher, and then you get someone like you get somewhere like the Mads Kolding from Denmark. Or Victor Axelsen, they're 6'4", 6'6". I mean, their waists were much higher than my waist. So there was a lot of foul. I won't say a lot of foul serving, but foul servings on height were always getting caught. With the 115, probably once everybody got used to it, we have far less faults called on height.
That's interesting.
Because people have learned where they can hold the shuttle.
Yeah.
Because it's consistent, it's always going to be the same.
Yeah, it's the same height, no matter what height you are. Yeah, so
exactly.
Yeah,
it must make the umpire, the service judge's job a lot easier, because they're not a lot easier, but it's the consistency, because previously you could have a 6'10" player and a 5'2" player, and that is quite difficult to judge.
If you take, for instance, Matt Colding at 6'4", and you take the little Japanese girl, Akane Yamaguchi, who's only about 4'9".
Yes.
I mean, there's a big difference in where the waists are.
Yes.
So yes, that device has made our lives a lot easier. It's made it, there's a consistent height that we can work with. Everybody has to serve from the same height, regardless of who they are. And we have mechanical help to keep it level for us. We have something to help guide us when we're trying to figure out where that 115 is. And the players respect the device for some reason.
And that rule, does that apply even down in Division 7 in the Dublin and District League, or is that just a rule for international players, that 1.15?
That depends on, and I put local rules apply. It is the laws of badminton 115. That is the laws of badminton. There is call it an addendum to the laws, which is called the alternate serving laws, which is, for want of a word, the old system. The one for your waist. Each country is allowed, international badminton, yes, will work to the 115. Each country is allowed to use the alternate laws where it's more appropriate for them. And if you take here in Ireland, to use the 115, you need a service judge.
Yeah.
We don't have enough people to put 2 umpires on every court every time. We just don't have that number of people.
No.
So that's where you're allowed. Badminton Ireland will say that the alternative service laws are used,
or would they,
unless it's the international level,
or would they
in which case the device is in place.
Or would they bring in the 115 at a semi-final, where you might?
We don't like to do that. I know what you're saying, Mark, or John, and that has been spoken about before. And to be honest, to be fair to the players, that's not fair, because you've just allowed them serve one way for 4 rounds.
Mm.
And now you're telling them you can't serve like that, you've got to serve like this.
Mm. Okay, yeah.
You can't change the laws of the tournament halfway through. It's not, it's not great. It's not a great idea.
I would, as a player, that would annoy me, because you've kind of got used to, one system. So either have it from the start or don't have it. And you don't have the resources, you've got to stick with the whatever you can deal with.
The alternates, yeah. We've got to use the other one.
Yeah.
That's it, yeah. But, players get frustrated when they get foul served. We know that. Yeah. But,
Yeah. Mark, have you ever been foul served?
Yes, I have, absolutely. Yeah.
I think you have, yeah.
At
a crucial time, maybe?
Yes, very rarely. I certainly in my younger day, I got better and better as I got older. I got to understand just I suppose through training practices, Carol has alluded to in the umpiring world, as a player, the more you practice, you just get better and better. I noticed as I got older, I got service judge faulted less as time went on.
Yeah,
I think it's all players just get, they get to know where to hold the shuttle, so that when you hit it, you're not faulted.
Yeah, it comes. It comes natural. You don't have to overthink it. It's just it's almost a mannerism, and they a feeling they know. Yeah, that's really, really good. And all these. And
actually, a good example of that one is Victor. Because you may remember when we were introducing that particular 115 law, there's a video somewhere of Victor practicing his serve, and I think he was kneeling on the ground.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, and it was funny, and he was having a bit of a laugh with it and all the rest of it. But a point to note with that one is that, as a player myself, and as you both play as well, you know that when you get ready to serve, you have your hands / arms, elbows, whatever else, you're used to putting them into a certain position.
Yeah.
And that's where you serve from. And that's what Victor would have been doing. And Victor had a good serve, and he always had his arm, hand, racket, shuttle in the position that it was low enough to be below his waist. and that was fine. But when the 115 came in, his waist was too high. So, in a sense, some players still do, some of the top players, you'll see them when they're serving in the 115, they bend their knees a little to drop the shuttle down, as opposed to others who adjusted their hands and brought the shuttle down.
Yeah, Caroline Marin is one of those players. She's adjusted down, like as you were saying. She goes down.
She dips down a little bit. That's right. She does dip. Yeah. So there you go. You know. That's the way it is.
That's very good. That's how she's learned to adjust, as opposed to some others. They do it that other way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they just change the way that they serve. You know.
Brilliant.
I don't mind what way they serve once they don't foul serve.
Yeah, once it's legal tender, that's right.
Legal tender, I'm happy.
Yeah, and Carol, our next question here, which moves on very nice, because we're into kind of now we're in the classroom now with Carol. So this is our classroom session, part of the Badminton Talk podcast. We see a lot of hand gestures that the service judges use. Can you and make different decisions to players on court? Could you explain to the listeners on our Badminton Talk podcast what these hand gestures mean?
The hand gestures, as a service judge, you just use the word fault. You just say fault. And then you use a hand gesture to signal to both the umpire and the player what type of a fault it is. Because you have to be fair to the player. I have just faulted the player, but he has the right to know what he did wrong.
Yeah.
So rather than have to give a long and lengthy explanation and the player come over to the service judge who then has to explain to him who possibly doesn't agree with him, we just use a hand signal to signal at the umpire and to signal at the the player what they have done wrong, which is why you will see a lot of umpires, the service judge will go fault and then they will bring their hand up. So from their elbow to their hand is kind of horizontal across their body.
Yeah.
That means the shuttle was too high.
Yes.
It was above the legal height, you know?
Yeah.
If you go fault and you point at somebody's foot, at your foot, well then it's because the player committed a foot fault. He stood on the line or he lifted his foot or whatever the fault was. If you're using the alternate laws, you'll go fault and put your hand in a vertical position, which means that the head of the racket was facing up. It should have been facing downwards and it was facing upwards. Wow. So that's what the hand signals are. Nowadays, the umpire will say service fault called, and they will verbalise the reason. But before we didn't do that. But still, the player, we have the signals so that the player knows what they did wrong. And I will have to say, probably 90% of the players don't know what the hand signals are. Anyway, you know.
Yeah.
So you end up sometimes having to explain your case. But that's what the hand signals are for, to let the player know what he did wrong, because he has to know what he did wrong or he might just go and do it again.
Yeah. And I can see you're also trying to keep the flow of the game going too, so that makes an awful lot of sense. Just on that subject, I don't want to detract too much from the topic. When you have someone that's done something really above board, or like where you have to give them a yellow card, how do you arrive at that decision? Like is it time wasting? Is it someone shouting, grunting on the court? Someone not? It's a fine line, Carol. It has to be. This is a real interesting, because once you get one yellow card, correct me if I'm wrong, after that you're getting your red card, isn't it? You're going home. That is correct. Well, no, the red card doesn't send you home. The black one sends you home.
Oh, the black one sends you home. Sorry. The order is you get a warning, which is a yellow card. And then if you do anything else again, or if it's a doubles game, your partner, because for the purposes of the match, you are one and the same. The next one has to be a red card.
Right.
You don't, at that point the referee comes to the court and you explain to the referee why and what has happened and why you've given him the card. The referee's decision then You can give 1 red card, 2 red cards. You can give 5 red cards. Not a great idea. The referee will stop it before that. But it's the referee's decision to give the black card, which disqualifies a player. The yellow and red cards are finable offences.
Okay, so in a match, if you get a red card, the game continues with a subsequent fine. That's so you, as you said there, Carol, you could end up getting a couple of red cards. Theoretically,
it could be a very expensive match. Yes,
that's what I'm saying. It could be a really expensive match. Yeah, but can the red card be overruled? Like, as the referee might say, well,
not really. No. It could be technically, yes. The referee could say, no, please remove that red card because it wasn't. It wasn't a necessary thing. But it's a very, very, very rare occurrence for that to happen because red cards are given on points of fact. Mm. Basically, the decision is mine that the player pushed the limits. And if my decision was that he pushed the limits, well, then that's it. Yeah, he pushed the limits.
And if you get a yellow card and you're faulted for whatever reason, or you've done something not correct, and then you get a red card, can you get a black card the same time as the red card?
Oh yeah,
you can. Yeah,
because when you get a red card, the umpire will call the referee to the court, explain the reason for getting the red card, and the referee can turn around and say, well, that's enough of that. That's the end of the match. And actually, to say that, the little trick you played right at the very beginning of the instance in Canada with the Thai players. Yeah.
Yeah. And if any,
as far as I remember, that went directly to a black card. I don't even think there was a red card involved there.
That's right. If any of our listeners, if they just Google, black card badminton Canada, they'll see that guy, they were chasing each other around the court. It was unbelievable. The guy and threw a chair.
He threw a chair. They jumped the A boards. They chased each other around the court.
Crazy.
Yeah,
it's what we're looking at. But they went to black card. Yeah, wow.
But any umpire. Mm. Any of us, we don't like giving yellow cards or red cards. Yeah. That's not the purpose of our job out there.
No.
If we can get past the issue by talking to the player and calming things down in that manner, well, then definitely we will do that rather than hand out the card. In a sense, you could say the cards are almost a last resort because you've tried your best to solve the problem and the player, whoever he is not cooperating with it. Mm. Sometimes you'll get a situation where just something happens. An explosion occurs. Those things happen too. You can't preempt them. You have to deal with that when it happens. Yeah.
You can see
my experience of the carding is it's very rare. And I remember playing sometimes what would tend to happen is that the umpire would just give me would maybe sometimes call me over to the chair and just say, Mark, just be aware that this and this and this, and there would be no card. I think the umpires, they like to give a verbal warning even before you get to the yellow card.
Oh, yeah, we kind of describe it as ourselves as a bit like a ladder. You climb the ladder very slowly. You start off by saying to the player, Mark, and then the next time you might call him over and say, Mark, don't do that again. And then you may call him over and say, Mark, this is the last time. Mm. And then maybe the next one is going to be the card, But, I mean, you try and build it up to try and stop the problem. Do things happen? I do remember one episode many years ago. I think it was the European Championships in Liverpool, where a very, very senior umpire had a player out on court, and we saw him issue a red card, which would be very unusual for this particular umpire. He's the type of person who would be, like most of us at the top, try and talk players out of it.
Yeah.
And he came off. And of course, the first thing everybody says, what did you do that for? And he said, well, we were going fine. We were keeping things calm. Until he told me to fuck off. Excuse my English.
Wow.
Wowzer. We didn't ever think, Carol, you would say that word. We have it on the record now. You can say the F word.
I'm only quoting somebody else, okay? The point was the umpire had tried his best for a game and a half, and he had been succeeding, no problem. I think it could have even been a yellow card. I didn't even think it was a red card. But, it was just kind of, he had kept the player calm, and the player had been kind of obviously beginning to lose it and lose the match and losing his rag. And it was only eventually, obviously, a minor explosion occurred and then bang went the card. But that's the point. We're not there to give them. We're there to try and get to the end of the match without a card.
Yeah. And what is the sanction? My understanding, and I'm probably out of date, yellow card is really just sort of like a warning. The red card, do you lose a point?
That is correct. The yellow card is a warning. It's a fine. If I remember rightly, it's €250 US dollars.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
On the yellow card. Then if you're faulted, which is the warning, or which is the fault, which is the red card, that's actually a $500 US dollar fine. And you have the other side gets a point. You don't lose one, the other side gets one.
Oh, so that, I always thought it was I lost a point if I got the red card. So it's my opponent gains a point.
Gains a point. So if the score is 9-6, and you do something, the opponent becomes 10-6. Is the best way to describe it. Yeah.
Did you see, as Michelangelo said, Mark, at the age of 87 on his deathbed, I'm still learning. So are you still learning?
Absolutely.
But I mean, a lot of people don't understand what is the consequences. I think a lot of people think it's like soccer. If you get a red card, you're off. No, if you get a red card with us, you just get a whopping big fine and lose a point.
Yeah.
And the other side gets the point instead of you. It's the black card that disqualifies you.
Here's an interesting question just to ask you, Carol, since we're just on the subject. Because in football, again, you get a yellow and then the next one you're red and you're off, okay? In badminton. Is it not really, really, really unfair in athletics, in the 100-meter sprint? If you fault, you're disqualified. You're off. You don't get the second.
It's usually a fault in the start, isn't it?
Yeah. There used to be once upon a time you could fault, but that was it. You had one warning, if you like, and then you were disqualified, which was, I thought was much fairer because, you think you go to Olympics, you train all your life for the one moment, and perhaps there should be an exception at Olympics. I say perhaps because it's split second. We're talking about a race that is nanoseconds, and getting off at the start obviously wins that. But do you think that is unfair? I mean, I'm just curious to get an experienced umpire like yourself, what your take is in another sport where rules are very important, but to take the player into account.
I think it's very hard on the players. Whereas one strike and you're out. That is very hard on the players, especially players who've trained for so long to get to where they're going. But that's the laws they have. It is hard on the players, but they're obviously willing to work with that. They have to be like our players and everything else. I'm sure they were involved in those decisions when the laws were changed.
Well, they obviously brought it in because some players were anticipating, I'll take a chance on this and try and get a head start. And I think that was probably why. And I think in a way back to the score system, there was a game recently where Ander Anderson didn't compete in the second set. He kind of threw it. And there was commentary about, we had to wait till 21 for this to happen, and we want to really remove that from the game. So I guess there's a lot of information fed into these rules, but it just seems unfair.
It does seem. I agree, but that's I'm sure, like I know any decisions being made with regard to the way our game is played and the laws. There is a players' panel that is involved in the discussions, and I'm sure the same applies with the athletics. There must have been a players' panel involved in that decision as well. and they went with it. It does seem very hard on them, I have to say that. Yeah, it does seem very hard on them.
And thanks, Carol, for that. And can you, Carol, just back to the cards again? Can't get away from these cards for a moment. Can you give a straight red? Can you, without a yellow?
Yes, you can. You can go straight to a red. The law states that a warning or a fault. You can go to a straight red if the words are flagrant offence. Or a breaking of law 16.2, which is the other one, but that's to do with the restarting the match after an interval. But yes, you can go straight to a red card, and I've seen that done.
Wow, I'd say a lot.
But it has to be something bad. To be fair,
it has to be some. And Carol, now to ask, you don't have to answer this at all. Have you ever given a yellow or red, or? Yeah, I have. I haven't given that many in my career because I've gone out of my way to try and not do it. No, I don't understand.
Yes,
I've never
I've
seen
given
you
yellows.
Yellow or red, by the way, so.
I've given yellow cards. I've gone only once that I can remember. I've gone directly to a red card. That's all.
Yeah. Wow. That's
because of what the player did. But yeah, I haven't given that. I don't remember. I don't even remember when was the last time I gave a card. Yes. And
Carol, again, just since we have you here, we have, I think, 9 more minutes on the meter, and so we want to just pack in the questions. The only way I can ask this is asking it: are male players more likely to get carded than female players? I'm just curious. I'm not trying to be biased to any gender here. In your own wonderful wealth of experience in umpiring, do you kind of go, it's a 2-to-1 ratio?
I don't. Yeah. No, I don't think there's a balance like that. I think you could probably, if you went and sat down and totted up all the cards, I'd say you'd probably find it's close to 50-50.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's
the player's personality rather than than the fact they're doubles, singles, male or female.
Yeah, everybody wants to win. I guess it doesn't matter whether you're male or female. We all want to win, don't we? That's what we want to do.
That's very true.
Yeah. Mark, have we any more questions? I think we've one more, don't we?
Yeah, we do. The question that I was fascinated, obviously, Carol, it's been brilliant to hear your story, how you've risen to the top of world badminton in umpiring. But you're one of a very select company of people, I believe, who you help train and you evaluate. There's only 9 people, I understand, in the world that work for the BWF, and you evaluate and train up prospective umpires. How did you get into that, and why is that important to BWF to make sure that umpires are well trained?
Why is it important to BWF to make sure the umpires are well trained? Because the players put a lot of time into their training and their effort, and they deserve that we do the same. That they are doing their very best to give their very best, and we should be beating them at that level. So in order to do that, we have to train our umpires. We have to ongoing training, if whatever way you want to put it, and that's what the BWF panel does. Our job is we go to tournaments around the world where what we call appraise is we watch the umpires, we talk with them, we give them advice, we help them in areas where we think they need some improvement. And then we also obviously examine umpires to move from one level to the next. But for most of us we're happy. We want to see the umpires improve the whole way, always aiming to be better, because the players are, and so we should be doing the same. Yes, there is only 9 of us in the world. There is, but the panel currently is 9.
Wow.
So it is. It can be hefty going on occasions when, for most of us, we do probably at least 2 duties a year for the BWF, sometimes 3. All our duties are always at least a week in length, and they could be anywhere in the world, because obviously we cover tournaments around the world. We try to work it that you kind of, if you're going to what we call appraise somebody, that you're trying to do it probably outside your own continent, because it's only, I'm used to seeing the European umpires, so it's better off that they have somebody, the Asians have somebody who doesn't really see them very often, in order to be able to give a more wider view of how they're performing and how we can help them. Yeah, I think there's 9 of us at the moment.
Yeah.
On the panel.
So it's a constant process of practicing and then getting feedback on how the umpire can improve. That seems like a good system.
Yeah, and if you ever see us at tournaments, even the Europeans, all the panels work the same. There's continental panels as well. And you'd see us at the European one. The umpire will come off the court. You'll see 1 or 2 of us sitting at the back of the court with a little notebook, scribbling notes. And then, the umpire will come off, and we'll often sit down with them for 5 minutes and go back over the match and talk about where we think they did really good. And you have to give positive feedback as much as anything else. That they did really good here, or this was well done, and this is an area you could perhaps improve a little bit on. And that's what we're there to do, both Europe, the world, and even here in Ireland.
Yeah, brilliant. Brilliant. Well, we have one final question, Carol, and then our listeners will start hearing a bit of the music in the background, which means we've wrapped this wonderful series of podcasts. I think Netflix, look out. We have a wealth of information coming here. This is fantastic. And so the question is, and you'll hear when you hear the music, then we obviously will start doing our goodbyes on this wonderful podcast. But Carol, can you tell us about maybe the best or most exciting match that you ever witnessed as an umpire, or maybe just witnessed, but maybe as an umpire? In terms of the quality, the excitement, the closeness, is there one match, be it in Ireland, be it in Denmark, be it in Jakarta, wherever it might be, that stands out to you? And you have about 1 minute, 20 seconds, so a few extra seconds there. I've seen some fantastic matches over the years at the world level. I think for atmosphere, for atmosphere, there will be 2 matches. One of them would be the men's singles final in London, which was Lin Dan and Lee Xiongwei. Just the atmosphere of that match. It was a fantastic match. It really was. The atmosphere in the stadium, it was brilliant. Was that a 3-setter, Carol?
Sorry?
Was it a 3-setter? Can you remember?
I think it was.
Yeah.
I think it was. But it was an absolutely brilliant. The atmosphere, because at that match, the spectators' atmosphere, we were all there as well. Those of us that weren't working were actually watching it. The atmosphere was fabulous. It really was, that one. And I was umpired a ladies' doubles match in Indonesia, 2015. I did it in Indonesia, and it was China versus Indonesia, and the spectators, the atmosphere, and to be said, the players as well. It was a 3-setter. It was a long game. It was a close match, and it was absolutely fantastic. Wow. And the level of play was brilliant, and the players themselves were great.
And of course, Carol got to witness it all, as she does in these amazing matches. So anyone interested in taking on umpiring or doing lines, just talk to the next umpire or lines person that you see. Carol, it's been fantastic. Badminton Talk podcast here. Every minute, it's gone so fast, and we only have literally a minute left on the record. So, Mark, you want a final word to Carol before we sign off?
Yeah, no, Carol, thank you so much. Really enjoyed listening to you and all your experiences. It really is a huge amount of hard work you've put in, and you've got the rewards to get there. It's just fabulous to have somebody from Ireland go so far and represent Ireland so well. It's just brilliant. Well done, you, and thank you.
And thank you very much to the 2 of you. I really enjoyed it. I've had a great time talking about it.
Yeah, thanks, Carol. We really look forward to this podcast, even ourselves listening back to it again. Isn't modesty the great thing here? So we will sign off on this Badminton Talk podcast, and thank Carol again for volunteering her whole afternoon. In fact, today the afternoon is flown. Thank you, Carol, and we'll see you soon.